Hello, fellow geeks! This week on Geeks of Azeroth, a new hero in Overwatch, a new hero in Heroes, debate on how Hearthstone's going to survive, and another developer Q&A. All that and more on this week's Geeks of Azeroth.
By geeks.
About geeks.
For geeks. Welcome to Geeks of Azeroth!
So, Britzza, what
Hello.
has your week in gaming been like?
It's been incredibly quiet. I was trying to think of something like, usually when this show comes up, you think, okay, I haven't really played like much Overwatch and there's Overwatch news, so should I play a load of Overwatch before the show so that I can kind of say I played a lot of Overwatch? The truth is, I haven't actually done a lot across the Blizzard games, to be honest. I've tried to level up my warrior, which is still sort of just under level 80. I think more because I just want to change of pace with things. I've been trying to do a bit of Astran on some of my mains. People know that I'm having an awful time with that legendary quest. And yeah, really, I'm kind of just trying to avoid the beta more than anything else because of something similar to the situation you're going through. And other than that, I haven't done a lot. I still need to do like my Heroes of the Storm ranking games. And I think, again, because the first two games were so horrific, that he's just pushed me away. So, yeah, not a lot, but I'm sure, like, the weeks to come and with Gul'dan and that coming out, which we'll talk about in a bit, I should hopefully feel a bit better about getting into sort of more heroes and that sort of thing. What about you?
For as little as I played this week, I have been surprisingly productive.
Okay.
I'm up to 7 100s now.
Wow.
I finished off my seasonal character on Diablo this morning.
Awesome. Well done.
I played some Overwatch and gained a rank instead of losing a bunch like normal. And all of that has been in like 2 days of play, so...
Wow. So, between us, you've made up for me, to be honest.
Apparently. I think I was just on the cusp of doing all of these things that needed to get done, because like my druid was already 98, and I had two of the 300% experience potions, and my Diablo seasonal character was at 68.
So you just had to sort of push it over the edge each time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Admittedly, the thing is with me, why it sounds like I haven't been doing a lot of Blizzard gaming is because I've been trying to get back into Witcher 3. And that game is collecting dust on my shelf. So I've been trying to throw myself into that. But awesome that you've managed to get up to 7. I'm still on only 500s, I think? 4 or 5.
Yeah. I'm up to 7 100s, and I have every class except Hunter above 90 now.
Jeez. Are you going to push 90 a Hunter for 100?
So I already, with the Legion pre-order, I used mine on a rogue, because I can't level rogues at all. I'm terrible at it. I don't know why. It's one of those classes, I don't know how.
A bit too slow pace.
Yeah. Nah. It's too squishy. I'm used to something that can take a little bit of damage.
Okay. Fair enough.
But Hunter, like, I'm kind of excited for. I am impressed with how survival plays. And so I guess I may just buy 100.
Why not? Why not? Throw money at the problem.
Seems to work all the other times.
Yes. I think like most Blizzard games, if you throw enough money at it, it will solve itself. That's kind of their motto. Awesome.
Alright, so I guess that puts us into news of the week.
Hey, we recording? Yeah? Okay.
News of the week.
So, this week in the news, we have teasers for a new Overwatch hero that is coming in 2 weeks?
Possibly.
Week and a half?
Yeah.
Possibly.
or at least the announcement. So this is the news that one of the stands at Comic-Con that's in San Diego on the 21st, I think, 21st of this month, is going to have a behind the scenes of Overwatch's newest hero stand. And so the suggestion is that we'll know who the hero is by the 21st, if not on the 21st, and that the hero should come out shortly after. So possibly by the end of this month. And I imagine it's almost definitely going to have to be Sombra now, because the sort of graphic we've got is a biotic sniper rifle, I think.
Yeah. I don't know why. It better be a release right around that date, because if they're just like, oh yeah, it is Sombra, everyone's just going to be looking at them like, well, we already knew that. When are we getting Sombra?
Yeah, that is true. I think the announcement itself isn't going to give us too much info, and I think, they, in a sense, kind of Sombra's already been announced. At least it feels that way. So it's interesting as well the way they've got this graphic going on, because it's kind of like a discussion between Chilbjorn and Mercy about whether they can weaponize the sort of biotic stuff that I think. Who used the tech? Is it
Mercy and Soldier 76 both use the biotic tech.
So a lot of people are wondering whether, Sombra is going to be someone who's weaponized an otherwise good thing for ne'er-do-well purposes. And I just wondered, do you think it gives us an insight into any character, or?
I think it does, at least to an extent. Like, the game's already lacking kind of villain characters to an extent. But so I think she will kind of fill into that role.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully. And I'm wondering as well whether, playing a bit of Overwatch actually last night, I feel like, Soldier 76, he's kind of got the reputation as being the dull, boring, middle-of-the-road character, just standard FPS guy. But I feel like, in a sense, they haven't really tapped into those other aspects that FPS players be used to. The people who play with the sort of DMR-style rifles and sort of that more sort of battle rifle long-range style. Because Widowmaker's kind of like that, but she's way too squishy. And she can't really. I find if you're using that rifle like on semi-automatic, then you're going to die.
99% of the time I would agree with you.
Yeah.
There is the 1% of people who, for some reason, can play Widowmaker like none other, but...
Or like no scoping.
It's not me. Just people who you run up on, they stop their scope and just semi-automatic fire straight into your head multiple times, and you're dead before you can do anything.
Okay, maybe I need to watch a few of those on Twitch, because I just don't think I can get Widowmaker, to be honest. And the thing is, I find like getting those stances, like when you find a really good spot, you just get spotted so quickly, and next thing you know, you're playing dodge the Chilborn turret, and it just gets a bit. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'm probably rubbish.
I'm terrible with Widow as well. Really good with Hanzo. Like, Hanzo is my go-to character.
Mm-hmm.
I love sniping with him, but I can't do it with Widow. Terrible. Every game.
Well, hopefully, sort of Sombra mixes it up a bit. So I think there's not too much to really go off in terms of how this rifle's going to work, or probably how any of her other abilities work. But it looks like she's got some sort of grappling hook system, a bit like Widowmaker. Or at least we can see a grappling hook. So, maybe she might play a bit more like Widow than we realise, in which case, I'm screwed. As we've already said. And, otherwise, I think people will be quite interested to see her and see the design, more importantly. I think that's one thing they could probably reveal and spend time revealing without mentioning the release date. If they just get into the character really, as they say, behind the scenes, if they really go into the details of creating the character and the lore behind her, I think that could suffice enough. But like you say, they'd have to announce a release date like a few days after, or within a week, I'd imagine.
I don't know. I guess they could push it out like 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But I think if it was any more than 2 weeks, everyone would just be mad.
Yeah.
Or if they did the typical Blizzard thing and just said soon.
It's coming soon. This winter or this holiday or something like that. That'd be awful.
Yeah. Another new hero, though. In Heroes, we are getting Gul'dan this week. Tuesday, I want to say? Is this release?
Yes. I believe so. Come out with the update, won't it? So, available for Wednesday for most people.
So, last time I quoted a date, I was entirely wrong because I was looking at the wrong set of dates. So, viewers, do not listen to my opinions on this. But I'm thinking that's when it's going to be.
I'm going to double check because now you've made me doubt myself. I was pretty sure it was coming this week, but never mind. But anyways, while we're talking, I mean, we've seen the Spotlight. So the Spotlight came out with Gul'dan, and no surprise, I think a lot of people are worried about... I'm not worried, but I think you mentioned last week that he's going to probably be just broken for the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he's going to be broken. Like, he may be terrible or he may be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of leaning towards amazing because, frankly, his ult is so ridiculously powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely disgusting. Can't even get my words out. It's that disgusting. I'm stumbling. So we've got, as the heroic abilities, Horrify. So after a short delay, you deal heavy damage and cast fear on enemy heroes in the area for 2 seconds. And the alternative is Rain of Destruction, which is very much like a typical Warlock spell would look like in Heroes. I just feel like Horrify is just going to have to be the go-to one, because having that disruption...
Yeah, and I would agree on pretty much every map. I think there's some where Rain of Destruction might be able to be used.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it'd have to be more on maps where it's not so teamfight centric.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere where you can get away with kind of pushing a lane. So,
True.
say, maybe take like a Sylvanas or a Gazlo even, and have them start pushing. You hit level 10 with Gul'dan, you take Rain of Fire, and you just drop that on top of a fort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can't really come in to defend it because, well, of the AoE on that ability is massive, so it's just going to kind of zone you out.
Mm-hmm.
And then, on top of that, you're dealing, ridiculous amounts of damage to the structures.
Yep, no, that's fair enough.
So, maybe like Towers of Doom, I'm thinking?
Yeah, I think possibly you're right there. I can imagine something like that pushing one of the towers at a key moment. I mean, where the graphic they use for it, funny enough, is from the Horseman bit of Towers of Doom, and I just think, yeah, maybe that is the sort of thing. Or even like disrupting when the enemy team's going for the boss. Again, yeah, you could use Horrify, but I think Rain of Destruction, putting a little bit of AoE pressure on them when they're already dealing probably with enough AoE for the boss, could sort of just mess things up a little bit. Bear in mind, you're probably going to have a team. I wouldn't advise Gul'dan going into a 5-man team boss push on his own. He's not that good. Well, he might be. Who knows?
We really hope he's not that good.
Just pushing the team the whole way through. So the other ability's got Fellflame, which is the away flame. I'm trying to think of something. There's another ability I'm sure another character uses that's quite similar to that.
I'd say the closest is Jaina's Cone of Cold.
Possibly, yeah. No, it might be what I'm thinking about. Drain life, so you're draining the health of the enemy for 3 seconds, dealing damage to them and healing Gul'dan naturally. And then corruption, which is 3 bursts of shadow energy, dealing massive damage over 6 seconds, and it can stack up to 3 times on an enemy. So, yeah, I think definitely hitting that assassin role pretty effectively. But
I would agree.
Sort of, at the same time, what sort of weaknesses do you see in that style of play?
So his biggest weaknesses are going to be, one, his trait. Having to... Gul'dan doesn't just regenerate mana. Instead, he has to use Life Tap, which will give him a quarter of his mana back, but it also costs a pretty good chunk of health at the same time. I think it's like a full mana bar is like a little bit over half your health.
Which is... I think, to be honest, that pays off a lot more than it would restrict you. I think it's really obvious to think, oh, Jesus, I'm not going to be able to do more than a quick burst. But I think that's exactly what Gul'dan's style of play is going to be. Just go in, mess up really hit the team hard, pull back, couple of life taps, or like you say, really go all out and refuel your mana, and then just go in, hit them again, horrify, or just do your heroic, and then just run away like Gul'dan always does.
Yeah, I mean, it could work out. My biggest issue is like, oh, I need mana to survive, but if I life tap, I don't have enough health to survive anyways, so what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I guess Drain Life, like, he seems like he has a decent amount of sustain, but he has no mobility with it, so heroes like Illidan could definitely be difficult for him to deal with. Even bigger than that, like, his talents give him so many useful tools, and there's so many interesting choices in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems like he could be almost like a bruiser, even though he's a mage, with some builds. Because his Drain Life build, in particular, seems like he would have a ridiculous amount of sustain, like, almost like Sonya's amount of sustain with it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. I think... Yeah, for me, I guess I'm struggling to picture it, and even watching the spotlight, I think I always struggle with sort of subtle support heroes, or I guess assassins that aren't in your face, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I guess that's the problem, is that I've always played assassins that are in your face. I've never really loved the sort of Nova-style characters, the Illidans and even Jaina's, but my biggest fault with Jaina is I'm way too close to the action most of the time. So I think he probably won't appeal to me, but at the same time, yeah, I think maybe I need to sit down with those sort of metas and probably test myself a bit with that. But is he a character you're going to be sort of playing a lot of, do you think, or while he's still broken?
So 2 of my level 10 characters are Li Ming and Kael'thas, and then Jaina's at 9 for me.
Okay,
Mage is my role. Like,
fair enough. And I'm thinking, is that what maybe sort of a Kael'thas style of play is what he maybe that's it.
I think he's going to play a lot more like Kael'thas than any other hero that's out. That being said, it's not like a perfect 1-for-1 by any means.
No.
But
I think Kael'thas could get the drop on him most times. But again, it comes down to the player, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think if I had to guess, Gul'dan has a slight advantage, is what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, Kael'thas just burns people alive, but if you're talking about a one-on-one fight, Gul'dan has so much more sustain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess if you do get some well-timed life taps and then maybe a drain life in there, then yeah, he'll be able to outlast, I think, the mana burn from Kael'thas. Yeah. On a complete side note, what do you think of some of the skins we get to see?
I am so excited. So, Firelands is probably my favorite tier sets for almost every class in the game. That or Ulduar. 50-50. And one of his skins is the Bale Spider set from Firelands. And yeah, it looks really good. And kind of weird, but it's Gul'dan. He's supposed to look kind of weird.
Yeah, in some ways, I'm a little bit disappointed with the main look. Because in some ways, I thought that they were going to go with something perhaps a little bit more akin to the movie. And even then, he's got a very unique look for heroes, and that's the thing that surprised me. I thought you've got WoW Gul'dan, and you've got Warcraft Gul'dan, and I thought they would probably go for something quite similar to one of those, but they really have kind of given him just a very unique look, which sort of surprised me. And in some ways, I'm a little bit underwhelmed by the heroic, or the sort of level 10 skin.
I think they honestly themed it kind of a cross between, like, kind of the movie Gul'dan, but mostly, like, the Warcraft 2 character.
Fair enough, yeah.
Because he definitely has some very similar stylings to the Warcraft 2 character. Except I don't recall the spines on the back. I'm pretty sure that was from
I think
WoW
that's
in the movie.
Yeah. So I guess, does that sort of... I think we covered everything we really can with Gul'dan. I mean, it sounds like we're both really excited by what we're seeing.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm really confused because I don't know how I'm going to play him or if I can play him. I think it's a given, clearly, that you're going to play him. And, yeah, we'll just have to see what sort of skins he comes out. Do you think he'll be part of the... Go back to the skins very quickly. Do you think he'll be part of, like, the promotional events? Like, when they do sort of the seasonal festivals and things like that? I'm sure he'll get a Christmas skin. Almost undoubtedly.
Oh, I could see that. That would be good. I would be happy with that.
How can you not with that lovable little face? I guess, well, they can't keep giving, like, Jaina skins. I mean, my god, Jaina's got so many dance skins now.
They just give Li Ming skins now.
Oh, true. Fair enough, yeah. I guess she's kind of...
Which, I have a theory as to why that happens, but...
I think we share that theory, to be honest. Right, okay, shall we move on to the next story?
Yes, Hearthstone, most ridiculous card, reignites debate over randomization.
Yeah, I'll jump into this straight away, because I know I kind of dumped this one in without running it by you, because I wanted to get your thoughts on something. Obviously,
right.
Loads of people have had a chance to get used to the old gods and the new format, but the general rule, I think that sort of what's become established is there's still this view that Yogg-Saron has sort of just ruined the meta, potentially just for the RNG. And I wanted to get your thoughts on how, like, Yogg-Saron fits into play at the moment, and also whether you think things like RNG and what Yogg-Saron do, it really adds a lot of fun to the game. But as an example, if you were to have a final of a tournament and, one player was getting beaten absolutely, and then the other player just played Yogg-Saron and somehow won, a lot of people would say, well, you kind of damaged the integrity of competitive play by just coming up with this random fun little gimmick. And I just wonder whether you think Hearthstone is sort of losing that competitive edge, or at least losing that feel for a competitive game by sort of adopting to the casual players.
No.
All of the above discussed.
So, Yogg-Saron is fine for Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
These debates, in a way, kind of make sense, and I see where people are coming from and thinking that, it could damage the competitive game, but discrediting the Yogg-Saron player at that point is the mistake here.
Okay.
So, people assume, well, he's super far in the lead, or the person who's not playing Yogg-Saron in his deck is super far in the lead, and he's about to win, and Yogg-Saron comes out and, look, wins it. No. The guy who's playing Yogg-Saron has crafted his deck to be behind most of the game because it's just using spells and survive as long as possible, and then you drop Yogg-Saron as your win condition. So, his deck's doing exactly what it was intended to do. That's not a lack of skill, because surviving to that extent does require a significant amount of skill, especially in Hearthstone, and with how many combo decks are out there. I would say it's no worse than, like, the Leroy combo decks are, because they're just as gimmicky. If you're going to complain about Yogg one-shotting someone, if you want to, drop Leroy a faceless, or Leroy a couple buffs and a faceless manipulator and, swing for 20-some damage in one turn, it's the same idea.
That's a really good point. And especially the Leroy example, because I remember, I'm not sure if, like, listeners might remember this one as well. There was, like, a really sort of infamous Twitch streamer who, well, I'm not explaining it well. There was a Twitch streamer who managed to pull off, I think, somehow, I don't know the combination of cards, but managed to get, like, 7 Leroys, or, like, 6 Leroys onto the match. Struggling with words here today, Jesus. And I sit there and, like, as you're saying that, I think, well, in a sense, if that was the turn that won a tournament, if that was the turn that won a Hearthstone championship, would I see that as gimmicky? Like, okay, you just kind of made that a bit ridiculous. Or would I sit there and go, wow, that's actually just really impressive because you've, like you say, you've been able to use the deck to the full advantage and pull off something that's quite impressive. But do you think it's just the randomness of Yogg-Saron that kind of makes people think that, you know, it becomes less about skill at that particular point where you play that card and just, you know, it is just spinning the roulette table a couple of times and seeing what it looks like after?
I mean, to an extent, it is RNG, but I mean, it's a card game. Card games are RNG. You've got 30 cards in your deck. You've got such probability of getting each card.
True. You start with 5 random ones, and you can change a couple if you want. Yeah, I see your point. It's luck from the start.
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting any professional Hearthstone players because, frankly, that game is rough to play at a competitive level. Because while it is all RNG, it's the probability behind the RNG is what people care about. You don't play Yogg-Saron for RNG, you play Yogg-Saron for the probability of getting the possible casts. So knowing what cards he might cast and which ones you need and what the probability of those going off how you need them to is. Which is super complex.
Is Yogg-Saron a card that you're seeing a lot of play from high end or just get at any end across any of play or casual play? So he's getting a good amount of mileage compared to the other gods? I mean, are they getting used equally as much, or is Yogg-Saron sort of a go-to god at the moment?
I'm pretty sure N'Zoth is still the go-to. I haven't watched competitive in a few months, so the meta may have changed a little bit, but when it first came out, N'Zoth was the go-to god. Most powerful there was. I'd still say he's probably the most powerful because you never play a N'Zoth and are like, well, it might work out. No, you play a N'Zoth and you're like, I'm gonna win next turn unless you can destroy an entire board of Death Rattle minions.
Can you do it?
It can be done. It's not common, but it can be done.
I think that would make me wet myself.
And then Cthulhu still sees use. I know I saw a pic on Twitter of a guy using a Cthulhu deck. And yeah, Yogg-Saron still sees use. It's not... Yogg-Saron's not broken because you don't have to bring Yogg-Saron to a tournament to win. That's how I would put it. Yeah, you can bring Yogg-Saron, and you can definitely win with that deck, but it's a different type of player who's going to play Yogg. It's a player who's okay with a little bit of RNG in their deck, where most pros will remove as much RNG as they can from the game.
And I guess that's kind of what I was thinking in the background whilst you were going through that. Is it the case that with a Yogg-Saron deck, do you play it to... I guess there's probably two ways you could play it, from my incredibly naive understanding of Hearthstone. You could either play it so that you've just got this mass, you just literally use the ability to full effect, let fireballs rain down from the heavens, and whatever happens, someone is going to die. Or you can try and mitigate that damage and I guess just try and control it so that it affects the game but doesn't completely blow up the game. I mean, are they the two styles of play, or is there just a different way altogether of playing it, really?
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate, essentially.
My future as a Hearthstone commentator is assured.
What I would say, most of the time when I see Yogg-Saron, at least when I was playing heavily, it was in, deck archetypes that already used a lot of spells. Tempo Mage, for example. You're playing things every turn, but you have a lot of spells that you're going to end up playing throughout, and then cards that interact with those spells. So, turn 1 you drop a Mana Worm. 1/3 gets 1 attack every time you use a spell. Turn 2, all your spells cost 1 less. 3/2 minion.
This is going to be on the test, Big Voodoo. I'm going to be... You're going to need to study more.
Turn 3, Flame Walker, which every time you cast a spell, it deals 2 damage randomly to enemies.
Okay.
I mean, so you're already stacking cards that interact with spells. Then you have a bunch of spells, and then you just throw Yogg-Saron in there at your high end That way, if the game becomes completely out of your control, you have another win condition. You have a plan B with it.
Okay, and I guess that's probably where it comes down to, isn't it? That some people perhaps feel that a plan B where it just is an RNG-based cards, from when you look at the card and you read its description, it probably looks like, my God, it is just a spin of the dice. But like you say, if you're having a game strategy up until the end, which doesn't really include Yogg-Saron, you could probably have that deck without Yogg-Saron. And then like you say, you just have a playoff card, which at the end they could completely end it for you anyways. Then what's the harm in it? Like you say, it's just a plan B option.
Yeah, and Yogg-Saron fits really well into tempo decks because, like, if you control a tempo deck early on in the game, they can never really claw their way back into it. Yogg-Saron gives them that chance to claw their way back in.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think I solved the debate. I guess one last question for me is: do you think, or what sort of deck do you think is going to make up the championship finals at this year's BlizzCon? Do you think a Yogg-Saron will ever appear in a final?
Absolutely.
Really?
I think we will see it. Yogg-Saron is an incredibly valuable card. I don't think it's necessarily the most valuable, but I would say you see a Yogg-Saron deck in the quarterfinals. Okay,
I will hold you to that. What deck do you think is going to... I was going to say, what deck do you think is going to win? That's a completely random and pointless question, because if we knew that, then we'd take it, wouldn't we? But I guess... yeah, well, that's probably it. That's probably what I can ask. I would say, if you were going to take a deck to championships, then what sort of deck would you take? Bear in mind, you're going to see, by your assumption, a Yogg-Saron in the quarterfinals.
I would probably take N'Zoth Priest. Not necessarily that N'Zoth Priest is the most powerful. It's kind of terrible in a lot of situations, but it is my absolute favorite deck to play, and if I'm going to compete at finals at BlizzCon, that would be the one I would feel most comfortable playing. Especially since it tends to do really well against control decks, and if you're going that far up, I feel like there's going to be a lot of control decks there anyways, so...
Okay. But you're going to have fun, and it's all about fun at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
You've got to ignore the prize money, the tens and hundreds of thousands, and just focus on having fun.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, let's go with that. Awesome. I think that sums up everything.
Yeah. Which brings us into the discussion of the week.
What's a Drenna anyhow? Can I drink it?
Discussion of the week.
So, the Q&A this week, again, is going to be our discussion, and this week it was on artifacts and order halls.
Finally.
Before we get too much into this, was there anything that kind of stood out for you on this?
I think that there were a couple of standout things, although they were very class-specific questions. I think what they were talking about with some of the respecking behind artifacts was... I think it probably alarmed a lot of people, the fact there is going to be a high cost behind respecking your artifact weapon, but that was taken with the caveat of, well, you're going to be able to sort of play around and tweak things pretty freely leading up to that, so you shouldn't really have to respec that often. So I guess for me, it felt like for artifact respecking that you're not supposed to have as much control as we've had behind respecking in the past, which is going to scare some people, but the point is that the whole mechanic of it is designed to be unlike anything we've ever seen. So, cautious about that. I guess I'm a little bit nervous because I think, like Tarley said before and other things, I think in some ways the game for me, it should be about just being able to change things at a whim, a bit like a Diablo 3 play, but Blizzard has different plans.
Well, and it kind of makes sense that it's a high cost to respec, especially since you're going to end up with all of it anyways.
Exactly. It's me just being picky. What about you? Anything stand out?
Not at all.
You said it was kind of all stuff we kind of knew or could have guessed, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for a lot of people was the information on artifact knowledge. Like, I'm sure that was a big bonus to most people, but I already did a little bit of research and figured out that that's kind of how it worked anyways, so not that big of a deal.
Called it. Awesome. Well, I guess we might as well, like we always have done, just sort of take it from the top. Again, we're going off the MMO notes, MMO champion notes, sorry. And some of this, I guess we can breeze through the bits that are kind of obvious. So, the first bit being probably quite obvious, in that the team has designed artifacts and order halls to be relevant in the future. So, you'll have additional quest lines and content to look at as we go on from Legion. Into sort of future expansions, which again, I'm not surprised at, because they spent so much time building it. Like Garrisons, they don't want to chuck it all into the bin the moment the next expansion comes.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me at all either. Why wouldn't they add to it?
Do you think do you think it's going to be viable, really? I guess the concerns I have is that it sounds like artifacts and order halls are going to be a standard mechanic now going forward. I don't see them ever letting go of it, in a sense. I can see it now just becoming a staple that you start an expansion, you get your nice new legendary weapon, you go to your nice cool base camp, and on from there, which isn't a bad thing for me.
Yeah, I'm good with that idea.
Yeah,
so.
I'm cool with it, but I want them to tell me that, so that I can start reading into it like really in depth and planning how it works.
Honestly, I would be fine if they kept the same order halls. Like, you maintain the same order hall from Legion on. Like, I'm good with that idea. I'm good with keeping the same artifact, add a few new circles on it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because at the same time, I think a lot of the order halls they're so rooted in lore. And particularly a lot of them are rooted in Legion lore, that I wondered if they could be plucked out and put into something else in the same way. I mean, like the Dalaran sewers don't need to go anywhere. Like that could work viably, even if we went to another world, that could still make sense. But I don't know, maybe I'm just wondering whether they just find a way to transport us there or not. Who knows? Do you think it would just literally translate? Would you be happy with them just picking it up and saying you're going to go to literally the same place? Like the next
I'd be fine with that. Khadgar can do something incredibly intelligent and incredibly reckless every expansion.
That's just his thing. We're like, oh, Khadgar. You crazy man. Right, we might as well take this in turn. So, do you want to take artifact appearances?
Yeah, so when Legion releases, there is the base appearance that you get that everyone knows. Mm-hmm. That's what's on WoW's website is the base one. Then there will be an upgraded one from the Class Hall campaign, which I think for most of them feel pretty easy. Like, just a slight improvement over what the normal one is. And then a PvE questline that rewards one, a PvP one that you get from prestiging twice, I think? Maybe once? I don't remember.
I can't remember. I'm sure we looked at it like last week, but admittedly PvP doesn't stick in my head.
One of the first couple prestiges, at any rate.
Do some PvP and you will get it.
Yes. And then there are also hidden appearances that you have to do special things to unlock. I know they talked about being able to buy some with gold. Mm-hmm. And they also noted that some of them are a lot easier to get than others. For example, a lot of the hunter ones are easier to get for the hidden appearances. Yeah. That way, if you want to be a marksman hunter with a gun, you can, or Beastmaster with a bow, you can, stuff like that. There is another artifact variation that we've already seen that's intended to be included in a later patch. I'm half wondering if that's maybe like a raid progression item. I don't know.
It would make a lot of sense, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, when they brought out the later patch content for Warlords, whether there were, well, I guess like the Garrison and Shipyard quests were kind of, I was thinking whether there was any significant quest content put in, and I don't think it would go in a quest by the sounds of it. I don't think Warlords had that.
It could be, but I'm just thinking like, most of the time you get a title or something for the very last quest line, or the very last raid in an expansion.
Like the Moose.
Like the Moose, a mount or a title, or, different random things for completing the last raid in the expansion.
Mm-hmm.
This expansion's all about artifacts and class lore, and I don't know, it feels like an artifact appearance would be a much more fitting endgame completion.
I think that would be cool. Like, you bathe your artifact in the blood of, like, the enemy.
Sargeras?
Yeah, Sargeras, yeah. Maybe you have, like, a red fel-infused weapon then, or something like that. Or maybe just a fel-infused weapon full stop.
Yeah.
I think we've got already a couple of those skins, actually. Which one? I can't remember.
Well, and especially for Warlocks.
Yeah, that's it. How else would you do it? But yeah, no, I think that's much better. The worst case scenario for me is that they put it behind, like, an achievement, like a Pathfinder progression system. I think that would just wind people up.
Yeah, just do it the achievement for completing the last raid. I never get that achievement, but it feels like a fitting goal for it,
And heck, if you've been like in the LFR progression to Archimond and you fought Archimond, you know that it's hell. I think I've got like 2 completions and 18 wipes, so it's hell on Earth, and I deserve the Moose, Blizzard.
Artifact respecking kind of already covered.
Yeah, other than the fact it's going to be a high cost, you're unlocking things anyway, so you shouldn't have to respec that much, but if you do, it will cost you quite a bit. Artifact knowledge and catch-ups. So, I'll let you take this one, because you picked out artifact knowledge early on.
So, artifact knowledge is Blizzard's kind of progression system for this expansion. Essentially, artifact knowledge increases how much artifact power you get. You spend artifact power to unlock traits on the artifact. I'm going to say artifact a lot in these next few sentences.
Artifact.
There are only small increases on the first few traits from an artifact. Then the cost starts increasing much more rapidly. That's because those first few traits are the ones you're going to unlock on your way to 110. Once you hit 110, the cost goes up because you're starting to gather artifact knowledge. Artifact knowledge increases the amount of artifact power you get. It's a work order type system, or at least that's how I would describe it. You trade in class order resources to a researcher. He goes off for about 5 days, comes back, and gives you artifact knowledge. If it's later in the expansion and you are behind other people, you will get knowledge in less time. So if it's way far into the expansion, your research may only take 1 day instead of 5. And I just lost my train of thought.
So I think, from the sounds of it, they use the example, or they talk about, so if you're trying to maintain multiple specs, it shouldn't be too difficult to use this artifact knowledge and artifact power system, and you're getting artifact knowledge to boost that. It shouldn't be that hard to use it to keep up pace. So as you start approaching end content and you want to have those multiple specs ready at that, so I think what they said about 80% of the main spec, then yeah, it's not too much, and like you say, it's pretty low resource cost. I think 1,500 was what it was costing in the beta, but they've reduced it to 500. So yeah, it's pretty accessible. It's just like you say, it's one of those really long garrison missions you've got to do, which you send people away for weeks on end. But yeah,
I think the biggest things to note with it, like, artifact knowledge is universal for that character, though. So it will apply to all of your artifacts, so you can spend that power on your alts, which is what you're talking about with the catch-up. It is not account-wide, however, so
which makes
you have
sense.
to research it individually.
That does
I
make
agree.
sense, yeah. But yes, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second as well. What I was going to say, for me, it seems quite fine. And when they were talking about it, I think to me, it's more importantly, it sounds like they've done a good job of trying to get the system across and get people involved. I think the fact they've tweaked the resource cost has really helped. I know when I was sort of floating around the alpha and seeing some of this stuff, it wasn't too much of it, but nevertheless, you kind of get put off. I got put off by like, oh god, is this how much stuff's going to have to be micromanaged? And I feel like I'm playing The Sims inside.
Yeah, I think it seems like a pretty complex system and does seem like something that has to be micromanaged. But I think once people actually get their hands on it, the system simplifies itself, and for the most part, you're just putting in a work order for a small amount of order resources.
It's not too difficult, to be honest.
No, it shouldn't be.
So the next thing's sort of unlocking traits, kind of, as you might expect. So they're expecting it to take a few months to unlock every trait in your artifact, which is what they said from the very start. This shouldn't be something that's easy. It shouldn't be something that you can just, a month into the game, have everything at your disposal. And the time it takes will vary over what sort of player you are.
Go figure.
Which is cryptic for, how much of an MMO elitist are you?
Yeah, well, that and how much do you play? If you're a casual who plays 4 hours a week, you're not going to level as fast as a hardcore gamer who's playing WoW more than he...
who steps away 4 hours a week.
Yeah.
And that's just it, people at the race to world first and those sort of players will just nail this very early on. Probably will manage it in a couple of months, I'd imagine, maybe even less than that. I guess they could get
it's probably going to be the worst feeling for one of those world first raiders. He's probably going to log on to his character and forget artifact knowledge for like 2 days. It's just going to wreck his whole week.
Yeah. But it's interesting because it is the race to world first is, in a sense, is going to be a little bit more dynamic in that sense. I think it will be interesting to see whether how they factor that in. I'm sure some players will be able to get around it and maybe just like use default artifacts just to smash their way to the top. I guess when every minute counts, would you bother to focus on artifacts? Or would you just hope for the XP boost and just smash through the quests? Or do what they did in Pandaria and just go to the max level zone and just break the game there. Sorry, there's not. There's not a max level zone anymore. I just sit there thinking they can't do that now.
Well, Suramar,
can you get into Suramar from day one?
I don't know.
I don't think you can. Suramar's not unlocked, so they won't be able to do what they did in Pandaria.
I thought Suramar was unlocked. You just have to be 110 to enter it.
Oh yeah, sorry, but in the race to world first.
Yeah.
Because in Pandaria, I think they were level 85 and they went straight to Talon Steps and they just sort of killed mobs there as a group of 5, and I think it took him about 8 hours or something like that. They're just smashing top level mobs. But yeah, you can't do that now.
Yeah.
So yeah, at least no one will be cheating in Race to World First, but possibly maybe won't be bothering on artifacts either. We'll see. Hidden artifact appearances. You mentioned this earlier. This is probably, I think, for like a lot of PvE players. Well, I guess any player really. This is probably one of the most interesting ones, and part of it. The thing that stood out for me is that, like you say, it's not. They go out and say that like parts of the artifact system aren't equal between all the classes, and classes will have very different experiences. They want classes to have very different experiences, and there's no equality between the classes in this respect. I think very much because of what you said. I think they want some hidden ones to be more accessible than others, because some classes do want a bit more variety in their appearances, like use bows and guns for hunters and things like that.
Well, and I mean, you gotta feel a little bit bad for hunters. They've progressively started using less and less weapons over the course of every expansion.
So
now they're down to just one.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think part of it as well. I don't know if they mentioned fist weapons. I know they mentioned fist weapons later, but behind when they were talking about hidden appearances, I think it's fair to say for some of the classes, and the specs, not everyone enjoys their artifact weapon. I think for me, I get a bit frustrated that the fire mage has a sword and doesn't. I just feel like a staff would be equally effective. But hey, that's not that. I just need to warm to it, to be honest, more than anything else. Plus, I'll be playing Frost, so I'm not ever going to see it first time leveling. But what do you think in the sense of going out there and finding this stuff out in the world and through extra content? Do you think that's I guess do you think that's a good thing? I imagine the answer is yes. But what do you think Blizzard's trying to get us to do by putting that stuff out there?
I think Blizzard is trying to get us to do, in general, to just play the game.
What?
I really think that's pretty much their only goal with it is here's more and more content, here's more and more ways to play our game. Mm-hmm. Play it how you want.
Okay.
You may or may not get rewards from how you want to play, but it's here, it's available, you know?
And to those people who say, well, actually, it's a bit unfair that some classes' skins are more accessible, like they use the example here of some requiring Honoured with a faction, others with Exalted, and some will cost loads of gold. And to me, the first thing that jumps into my head is, right, all those gold hoarders who have just built up loads and loads of gold, or like WoW tokens, it's kind of it's an essence of potentially pay to win with your... I guess you're paying for a skin, you're not really winning, are you? You're paying an awful lot of money. So... I guess that point's kind of moot, but still, do you think that there's any unfairness, I guess? Because I guess some people might not, ever play hunts. I've played a hunt, but never really in any great depth. So, do you think people feel disadvantaged?
I think there is a fairness to it in the fact that you can play any class. Mm-hmm. If you want to be able to unlock your artifact skins easy, then go play a class with easy artifact skins to unlock. Mm-hmm.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. I think as well, the thing from my perspective, and I'm playing a bit of devil's advocate here anyways, but for me, I think what they're trying to say is the classes will have individual stories, and part of that is, not just quest content, but the factions themselves. What they're trying to say is this is what a hunter's experience in Legion is like. And like you say, it's very much, if you want that experience, go play it. But otherwise, if you've signed up for a warrior, and your specs aren't as easy, that's just what it comes with being a warrior. Don't measure yourself up to others, because they're off playing the pally, they're off playing the mage, you're playing the warrior. If you want to play the others, go play them. But I think you're right. It comes down to what class are you playing, and what do you need as that class to get the next thing.
Not to mention, it's just cosmetic stuff. If it was a flat power increase and it wasn't balanced between all the classes, then, I could see an issue, but...
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think, though, post Overwatch and post Heroes, to say it's just cosmetic, it's really difficult. The whole game is based on cosmetics.
That's fair.
But moving on to, I think, there's still a bit to go, actually, so we'll pick up the pace a bit. They talk about levelling and artifacts. They say the team balanced all of the classes against each other and then did another balance pass with all the classes and their completed artifacts. So classes should now feel complete and interesting through leveling experience and at endgame. So, apparently there is no unfairness in the world of artifacts now. It is all good, and no one will ever complain that their artifact is underpowered. Ever.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
A complete side note, we touched on Race to World first. What sort of classes do you think are going to edge out in that race?
First 110?
Yeah, I don't see it being a spellcaster. I think many classes have an edge, very much so.
I would say Demon Hunter.
Demon Hunter? Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure about Havoc or Vengeance on that, but I think it's going to be Demon Hunter. Between their mobility and then their ability to AoE stuff down as a tank or a DPS, and the self-healing they have on top of it. Like, I think they just have too much of an edge over the other classes to not be the first 110.
Interesting side note, though. The Demon Hunter artifact weapons, or at least the one I did for Havoc, happens in the Broken Isles. The others, they go elsewhere, don't they? They go all over. Artifacts go everywhere, don't they? Across all.
Yeah, it can be anywhere.
I'm just wondering, in terms of if you had to get through your mission as quickly as possible, what is the shortest artifact mission? Would that even play a factor?
No idea.
I don't know either. I'm just thinking maybe you're right with Demon Hunter in that, in a sense, the artifact weapons are there, so you just have to basically just go out, grab them, and just go straight into the content. If the others take you elsewhere, you've got to come back and... it's a Hearthstone. It's not really that much, but still, it's not in the content, I guess.
It's incremental gains.
Exactly.
And when you're talking about World First, incremental gains are important.
Mm-hmm.
And, speaking about Demon Hunters real quick, I am in love with their starting zone experience. I don't know about you, though, but the artifact questline just seemed a little bit subpar to some of them that I've seen on the other classes.
I would agree with you. I think from what I saw, and admittedly I sat through a really broken experience playing in the alpha, where like mobs wouldn't respawn or like mobs wouldn't regenerate health, so you'd end up dying 4 times and then you could kill a boss by yourself. So I don't know if I got the proper experience, but certainly for Havoc's one. Yeah, it didn't do much for me. Like, you go through the leveling, and you have this wonderful, great story, behind, breaking out of prison, or going through the Illida missions, breaking out of jail, and getting out into the world. And then you're right, you just feel like, here's your artifact weapon. Brilliant, here's the lore, let's find out. Oh, you just got to kill this demon, he's just down there. You just got to hop over some rocks. Like, really? Like, I haven't got to pluck it out of his heart and then jump into a cavern full of 1,000 demons and I have to survive against all... No, there's nothing that. Jump over some rocks and kill a demon.
Yeah, but that was about vengeance too.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that it doesn't change that much either. I haven't seen it in beta whether they added anything or changed the mechanics up, but yeah, it doesn't feel particularly special. Bearing in mind you go through an amazing leveling story. So I've lost track of where we were. So we talked about class balances, quest lines. So they said there's some overlap between the artifact quest lines, but not as bad as some players think. There are a few specs that either share some content or the setting, but the majority are very unique experiences. So I imagine Demon Hunter, I think, is probably one of those. Is it you jump down into that cavern just below Dalaran? And
I think the different... So I don't think Demon Hunter's on there. I know they noted Balanced Druids, Affliction Warlocks, and one other, I think it was a Mage spec, that all go to Deadwind Pass.
Karazhan.
That's the one.
That little holiday retreat.
But, for the most part, they go to Karazhan and they do some of the same stuff, and then it's an entirely different experience even after that, so...
Okay. I presume it must be Arcane spec for the mages. That makes sense.
I think so. Or it might not even be Mage. I might just be making this
What was it? There was the Warlock Affliction spec.
Yeah.
Was it?
Balanced Druid and Scythe of Elune.
Yeah, Moonfire and Arcane. It's anything purple.
Yeah.
Goes to Karazhan. So, I guess... But Karazhan's kind of a really important part of that, I think. And also, why come up... why should... What's the problem with that, I think? I don't think there's an issue with sharing locations.
No, and, from what I've seen, the quest lines make you feel like your class, too. Like, good thing the way they put it was, good thing I'm insert your class here. Because if I was any other class, I wouldn't be able to do this. It's very similar to, the Green Fire quest for Warlocks. So, I don't know, I like it. I think they're good as long as they don't all turn out to be like the Demon Hunter one.
Jump over rocks. That's the way to do it. What have we got next? So, artifact lore and story. I'll let you take this one.
So for the most part, they did actually make sure and include lore of the less well-known artifacts, or the artifacts that we've never heard of before this expansion.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote out the story for each of the artifacts, and all of that will be available in tomes in your order hall as you gain artifact knowledge. Which, if you're just someone who likes to play WoW, not a big deal. This part doesn't really matter. But if you're someone who really enjoys the lore behind everything, I think this is a fantastic addition.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes artifact knowledge actually feel like something more than just a number, in my opinion.
I agree. I think when I think of that, I think the artifact weapons have a danger of turning out a bit like Overwatch lore, which is that it's clearly incremental to the story, what these weapons are, but no one's actually going to know what they are, really, when it comes down to it, or what's going on. So, yeah, I'm really glad they're putting that stuff in. I don't know personally if I'll have the time to read it, or whether I'll even bother, but I'm sure if I'm waiting for a raid to pop or something like that, I might just go, well, what is the difference between these weapons, other than what I've played through?
I think I'll end up reading them all. I mean, I don't imagine it's going to be like, a novel for each one. So why not take 5 minutes out of your day and read to see what amazing artifact you are carrying around?
Okay, cynical point of view from me. Would you go and read them, or would you just open the wiki page?
Are we talking my first character or my fifth?
I think I know which way around that goes. Yeah. To be honest, I think whilst that's lazy of me, I think I would like to read them, just because I guess part of the experience is knowing where these books are, and I guess, if you're hanging out in your order hall anyways, what's the harm in... It's probably shorter to go over and open the book than it is to open the wiki page, which probably says a lot about modern day society. That I'd rather go online than do something in real, inverted commas. I don't know. Yeah. The point being is that, I think you're right. First time, maybe it's worth it, but fifth time, you've probably got a lot of artifact weapons to keep track of, and you might need reminding which is which.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, weapon types. So, they've got a few of the artifacts where the weapon type goes back and reflects the old story. So, a big hammer, for example, and a book is a classic Holy Pally. Look from the older Warcraft. The weapon types will change, and also help to make the weapons feel unique. So Holy Pally has a mace and a shield for a long time, but you don't actually use them in combat. So, immediately reading that back in my head, I've got more confused. So, what they're saying there, effectively, is that the weapon types of the artifacts are designed to look a particular way, but, I don't know, I'm losing my train of thought now. Big Voodoo, explain.
Alright. So they changed some of the weapon types that people were using on certain classes. For example, the one they used was Holy Paladin, who normally uses a shield and a mace. Now they have a big hammer, so probably the equivalent of a two-handed hammer, and they also have a book, which would be kind of like a held and offhand item.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted them to feel like the classic Warcraft 3 Paladin, Uther. If you think Heroes of the Storm, that's exactly what he does. Hopefully the animations kind of transfer over too. So wouldn't it be cool if you're still carrying that big hammer and you've got the book open in the other hand as you're casting? That'd be fantastic. I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not, but I'm hoping for it.
It'd be a waste if it wasn't.
Yeah, right?
I think, why go to that trouble of having an offhander? And, it doesn't make sense. And like you say, I think like part of that, I'm pretty sure Uther's Hearthstone animation for Heroes is he kind of puts the mace over his shoulder and he's opening the book and the pages are just spinning. Yeah. And I think that'd be a really cool way to cast, I don't
anything?
Know, like a consecration style spell, or something like that. Yeah, that'd be really cool. Yeah, or anything. A resurrection. Imagine if your res was that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, or even your basic heals, like Holy Light. All the time. I would be fine with that.
Rather than the fireball animation.
Yeah.
They're sort of I can't show it, I'm not on the screen, but still. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Now, where were we at again?
Druid forms.
Druid forms. Feral and Guardian get the weapon and become the representation of that avatar. So Ursoc for bears, Ashmane for cats. That is why there's no racial variation in them. That's why you don't have horns anymore if you're a Tauren, or big ears as a night elf, because you are not a half night elf, half bear. You're the avatar of Ursoc or the avatar of Ashmane.
It also saves time for them. They've got enough skins to work on without racial druid specs.
Well, and I don't know if you've looked at like MMO Champions' list of artifact skins and everything.
I haven't recently.
So all of the classes are pretty similar. 5 variations with like 4 or 5 different variants on it, and then you tab over to Druid, and it feels like that list is 20 times longer, and they're entire character skins instead of just a skin for an artifact. So
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Don't be greedy. That's what I'm telling you.
Everyone gets their fair share. Yeah, and I agree. Like you say, it's a really good way they've explained it as well. You're an avatar. You have a particular look because of that weapon, not because of who you are. And
they also said that they are considering giving you the option to use the regular Druid models, because they think that's a good idea, but it won't be shipping with the game.
Okay, so the thing I want to check here is, do they mean like the dated models?
Apparently.
Yeah. So they're saying you can either have this really nice one. Again, it comes down to personal preference. I'm sure, like, people with Nostarius put up with it for a long period of time, so I'm sure that other players would potentially feel nostalgic for it. But yeah, I don't know why you would.
I don't know. Especially with some of the skins. Who doesn't want to be a stone bear?
Yeah.
If I have to tank as a bear druid, I'm going to be a stone bear. The entire time.
Even when I'm not a druid, I want to be a stone bear. Something actually that this was interesting for me. The artifact fist weapons. So fist weapons have always been invisible when sheathed in WoW, and they go in to explain that the reason they're sheathed. Well, one, it makes sense because if you take them off your hands, you should be able to see them. But 2, there's not really a point to sheath them. Where would you hang like knuckle dusters or those massive sets of claws? They're bulky, but the technical reason is that they clip everything. They can't find a reason to make it look good, or a way to make it look good. So that's probably the reason they're not going to do it. I think the point on whether it looks good sheath is contentious, because I imagine you could like hang them from your hip. That look pretty cool if they were sort of swinging there, but at the same time, the animation for drawing your weapons is sort of reaching round, isn't it? So they'd have to sort of be one on each hip, wouldn't there? Like a pair of pistols or something like that. So I don't know. Where do you sit on that? Do you think they're okay looking invisible when sheathed?
I feel like WoW players have a lot of first world problems.
What do you mean? Yeah, I think it's probably exactly where, in a sense, it's kind of like the artifact fist weapons are where druids have been up until now.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not really a big thing at the end of the day, and heck, if you don't want them to be invisible, there's a way to do that. You walk around with your weapons always out.
Right. And then they also noted that all of those fist weapons aren't going to be sheathed while casting if you're, say, for example, an elemental shaman. So it's not like you're never going to see them. They're actually going to be there while you're using your abilities now. Which, again, just goes to show that it is a first world problem. A first WoW world problem. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's... I guess it's good to hear, because there's probably more improvements to fist weapons than that limitation. So I'm happy with that. And admittedly, when I was sort of messing about on monks, it did get me thinking about fist weapons and whether I want something like that as a potential alt for Legion. So that'd be cool. Order Hall teleports. I'll let you take this one.
All right. I really am just disappointed in this, because I didn't know that they had been removed from the game until now. But originally they had teleport spells to every order hall. For example, warriors would leap to Valhalla, and it was amazing, and I was so excited to be doing this.
Proper God of War style.
Yeah. Like, it was going to be the greatest feature in all of WoW, in my opinion. But they're no longer there. It makes sense because they wanted Dalaran to be your central hub. So you shouldn't have to go back to your Order Hall that frequently. As well as there's portals in Dalaran to all of the Order Halls. Or the Order Hall itself if you're a rogue. So
Yes, that's a good point.
not a big deal in all reality, but man, I'm sad about it.
I guess, to me, it sounds like something they might bring back in a patch. I think a lot of people, particularly me, that I feel like you, where it's like, yeah, it'd be really cool to have. The fact that they used I'd say excuse, not really an excuse, but the fact they said, oh, we now don't expect people to go back to their order halls as much. Well, they're still a central part of the lore, and you've kind of taken that away. Like, you've taken something lore-focused out of that experience. It's not a case of, if it was like a Hearthstone, then yeah, cool. If it's a functional thing, that's fine, but that's a really cool lore thing. Like you say, like jumping up to Valhalla, or I can't remember what the other ones were, but...
the eagle that comes and picks you up as a hunter. Yeah. All that stuff sounds great.
And it makes you feel like your class, and that's exactly the sort of stuff they're putting in the game. So why would you take that out? I don't get it. Maybe there's a lot of clipping. I don't know.
I would have gone like the other direction for them, where you have the teleport to the class hall, and there's a portal to Dalaran inside your class hall.
Oh, I see what you mean. So the Order Hall is the hub, and Dalaran is one of the locations. Like, probably you could get... That would make more sense, because then you could go to all the major cities from your Order Hall, not just Dalaran.
I would do just like Dalaran. Make Dalaran the major hub, but make players go to their Order Hall to go to Dalaran. Mm-hmm. Like, why are we going to Dalaran? I'm not a mage. I don't want to be in Dalaran unless I'm going to do, I don't know, auction house stuff or, normal major city stuff. The rest of the time, I just want to be in my Order Hall because that place looks sweet.
And do you know what? I think some people might say, well, that just sounds like needless work, but I don't know if you're the same as me, but I find myself deliberately chaining Hearthstones. So I've got my Garrison Hearthstone, but I deliberately set my Hearthstone to Lion's Pride. Is it Lion's Pride? In Tanaan? Whatever the Alliance hub is in Tanaan. Yeah. Because I know I've got the portal to Ashran, and from the portal to Ashran I can get to any city. So I plan it that way. So I think, yeah, you're right. Having an Order Hall where I could potentially get anywhere, even if it was just through Dalaran, wouldn't be a problem for me. And you're seeing more of your class, so why not?
Yeah, I think that would be the better option, but who am I to question Blizzard?
Most people.
yeah.
That's fine. Admittedly, they have, I think part of this is to get their thoughts on it and get our reactions to it. And I think we both agree it's kind of counterproductive to, we want to make your classes special and really cool, and like part of me probably wanting to play a hunter will be, by the way, I get to fly on an eagle every time I go back to my Order Hall. That sounds awesome. So moving on, because we've still got a little bit left. So the Order Hall NPCs. So for the most part, the team has introduced the famous NPCs that will appear in the Order Hall. So we know these as like what's her face? Not Sanguinar. I'm thinking of someone else. I'm thinking of the Rogue. But you've got the lady. Oh, she's now Hearthstone card. What's her name? They got like the famous paladins. Liadrin. Is it Lady Liadrin? Yeah, I think it is. So yeah, like people like her and all these other famous faces appearing in your Order Hall, which sounds really awesome because now they work for me, and they want to introduce more in future patches. The Warrior Order Hall, for example, originally had a lot of ghosts of famous warriors, which I think sounds awesome, but you can sense from the fact the word I used originally means that they took it out because they felt it didn't feel appropriate for all the human and orc heroes to appear in Vrykul, just to appear there, because it doesn't. I guess to them is that, I'm trying to think how they worded it. Did they say that it didn't make sense to kind of just have this amalgamation of dead warriors and not to have the sort of specific human and orc lore? Is that what they said? Or
it was this place is like kind of a uniquely Vrykul place. Okay, so having all of the other races there didn't make much sense. I guess is kind of how they put it.
Which does make sense, I guess. But at the same time, I feel like it comes back to the evil thing. It's not nice to hear that they're taking out class-specific cool stuff. And also, I'm sure, like, in vanilla, like the Whirlwind Axe missions or quests from Warriors, we had to go get that. Like, there were a lot of, like, named warriors there and things like that. And I just don't know. I feel like seeing some of that stuff, that nostalgia brought forward, would be cool, even if it doesn't make... Well, it doesn't have to make sense 100% of the time, I guess. I mean, come on.
That's fair.
Yeah, so they're going to be... they shifted, in that particular example, to focusing on the Vicral story and fantasy, which I can't blame them for because, hey, they're spending a lot of time on it, and I guess you want to hear about that story rather than seeing Bert the Lost Warrior every 5 minutes. And one of my screens just closed, so while I reopen it, you take the next point.
Order hall services. So there are not going to be any banks, no transmog NPCs. You will get rested experience in the order hall, so you can change talents there. Mm-hmm. But all of the actual services are going to remain in Dalaran. Essentially to make Dalaran the hub instead of everyone just hanging out in their order hall all the time.
Do you find this... Sorry, go on.
Trade chat will, however, be available in the order hall.
Okay, yeah, and that's absolutely fine. In some ways, do you feel like this is exactly what we were asking for when Warlords was coming out and the whole Ashran debacle started?
Pretty much.
They've finally done a 180, and I don't think they're getting enough credit for actually realising like how not bad a mistake Ashran was, but just how much we really just want hub cities back, or a hub city.
Yeah.
And they've really focused on that, and I think they've done a great job, and I guess as well, bringing trade chat into the order halls as well. Again, it's going to make it feel like a community at last.
Yeah.
I mean, God's sake,
much more so, at least.
Much more sociable, so that's going to be a big boost.
And then we kind of already touched on the Hunter artifact weapons, where, you get this main one type for your spec, but the other appearances are going to be easier to get because hunters do have a tendency to be much more picky about what type of weapon they use.
Yeah, I guess so.
And then Atris is going to be similar to the other order halls as far as the systems and services used. There will be the same additional content and patches as all the other order halls. The team doesn't want to completely change the order halls when they are already existing in places in the game. So they don't want to completely change Atris, but it may kind of evolve over the course of the expansion, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. And
there's no sense in creating an entirely new order hall when Death Knights pretty much always had it anyways.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think in some ways they were the Death Knight experience was the backbone of what's coming now. So why would you ever take that away? I think Ebonhold has inspired a lot of where we're going, and I think in some ways it should stay.
Yeah. For their process in selecting artifacts in order halls, they just looked at class fantasy more than anything. What locations were connected really well with the class, and what was much more neutral rather than something Order Alliance specific. For example, orcs in Stormwind Chapel wouldn't feel right.
Yeah.
Go figure, right?
Yeah.
And then for artifact weapons, again, class fantasy was the biggest thing, as well as what would stand out and feel unique. They did try and use weapons that were either already known or belonged to a hero that was already known. For example, the Fire Mage sword. We don't really know much about Philo Malorn, but we knew Kilthas used to have it, so...
Kilthas used to have it, and I think, if my lore is right, that it was the Lich King who killed... No, I don't know if the Lich King killed his father, actually. I might be making it up. Ignore me. But yeah, I agree. I think they've done a great job of just bringing it all together. But
That was Frostmourne he used.
What's that?
Yeah, Arthas used Frostmourne to kill his dad.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I am right. Okay. I usually have to doubt myself when I'm right with lore. So I think the stories behind that are just as interesting. And I think, like, for example, reading the book of that in your order hall about how that sword came into being and how it got passed down to Kalthas and that, effectively that conflict with the Lich King and his father would do a lot to make you think, Jesus, I actually have a really good weapon. A pretty nifty little sword in my hand. Although I'll always wish it was a staff. But that's not the important thing. On a side note, sorry, I was just thinking to myself, do you think that... Well, what do you think this is going to do for the roleplay community? I mean, for me, this sounds, like, amazing. Like, apart from the artifact conflict, and let's just, I think we've all agreed, it's probably not going to help seeing everyone with the same weapon, but you can kind of look past it in some ways with the skins and maybe like how you interpret it. But I think everything else is like an RPer's dream.
Yes, I agree entirely. As long as you don't RP with other people of the same class.
Well, that's the thing. In some ways, I feel like that they will. I think having like a group point for like warriors to meet up will be amazing for RPers.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But like you say, the big thorn in the side of that is that you're all wielding Kalthas' sword, and you might have to figure a way around that. But it will be interesting. I'd be interested if any RP is listening, like how you're going to get around the artifact weapon situation. Because I don't know, maybe you can like rob RP that Kalthas' dad had a secret factory process going on, which was closed for health and safety, but before it closed they managed to get 57 copies of the same sword made. Or maybe he just had spares. Maybe they were throwing swords all along.
It wasn't actually a special sword.
No, it's a mere letter opener. A souvenir that you got when you passed through Silvermoon. And that's it. It was a souvenir in the store, and Kalthas' dad rocked up, realised he was under siege, and just grabbed the first thing he could. So he jumped to the souvenir store, picked up a sword and shield off the side, and went, right, this will have to do. Awesome. Well, I think we've made it to the bottom.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. In a sense, we've completed a quest ourselves, and probably as much time as it takes to do an Order Hall quest. Is there anything that sort of stands out for you on this? How are you feeling, I guess, overall about artifacts and Order Halls? Do you feel pretty content with where they're going?
I'm super excited for all of it, except the teleport being gone. That was the one thing that just bummed me out, because I wanted to be carried by an eagle or, any number of amazing teleports that they had planned.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I definitely feel excited. Because I think they've done a great job, as we've just said. I think they've done a great job getting the story in, and really again they have succeeded in making classes feel unique. Take what you will, like take the pinch of salt out of some of this stuff, and like see some of the weaknesses. But at the end of the day, every weakness I see is a byproduct of them making the classes more unique. Whether that's having longer routes to getting skins and things like that, it doesn't matter to me, because I'm just interested in my class and what I need to get. The only thing I think that worries me, and this is a personal thing, is getting an understanding of how the artifact knowledge and power system works, to make sure that, like you say, I'm not inadvertently wasting 3 days of game time because I forgot to send someone on a mission.
Just make sure you start the work orders. Other than that, it kind of handles itself. So.
Well, that's it. I'm hoping there's going to be an add-on pretty quickly to help me solve all of that, because I will need it. Awesome.
Well, that will bring us into the Hero's Call. Shout out to Tarley, who's not here because he fails.
He fails. Shout out to Tarley's mum. Because he would give a shout out to his mum if he was here.
Thank you all very much for listening this week. As always, you can find our show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and Twitch most weeks except this one, I guess.
Except this one, because I fail.
Yeah. You can also catch us on Twitter at Geeks of Azeroth. You can catch Tarley at Tarley_pause with a Z on Twitter. Britzza, where can we find you?
You can find me at Britzza_EG.
And then you can find me at my ridiculous leet speak at B1GV00D00. As always, you can also contact the show with questions, shoutouts, any messages at geeksofazeroth@gmail.com. Remember, our contest for those 3 Legion is still going on, so send it to that email address, and we'll get those sorted through. And then remember to check us out on www.epicgeeks.co.uk for more shows. We'll be back at the same time, same place next week. Until then, have a great week in Azeroth.
This podcast is part of the Epic Geeks Network. To find out more about our other gaming podcasts, head to epicgeeks.co.uk.